The Moto X. It's destined to be a very significant, if not a blockbuster, smartphone, and we're on the eve of its launch. We'll talk about that, along with another Android flagship from LG in the hour ahead. Plus, we'll cover Samsung gaming the system. We'll chat on the new Nexus 7 setting the world on fire, maybe. And we'll do some fretting about everyone's favorite fins on episode 055 of the Pocketnow Weekly, the once-a-week podcast from Pocketnow where we discuss smartphones, tablets, and the state of mobile technology in 2013. I'm your host, Michael Fisher, editorial director at Pocketnow, and today I'm joined by everyone's favorite Instagram jogger, multimedia manager Jaime Rivera. Good morning to you in Honduras.
Instagram jogger, is that my category?
That is. That's your new title now.
Good morning to everybody. How are you?
Well, I'm sure they're very well now that the weekly has begun. And we also have on the air the man who keeps our front page humming with new hotness, all the way from the Pocketnow headquarters bunker somewhere beneath Media, Pennsylvania. Chief News Editor Stephen Schenk, good morning to you.
Good morning, Michael.
Yay! We have a great team assembled, as we were just talking about on the other side of the podcast before we hit the record button. Taylor Martin has some kind of BS excuse as to why he can't be on the air today. So whatever he's doing, if those are three comparisons he's shooting at once, I don't know what he's up to. But it is great to have you guys here, and we've got a ton to talk about, don't we?
Boy, howdy.
Oh, yeah, we do.
Let's make some announcements real quickly. I want to say that there will be some listener mail at the end of this show. We are not going to get to all of it, but we have a tentative, and this is news to you guys, we have a tentative arrangement set up to do this, to have a special listener mail only episode of the Pocketnow Weekly, hopefully next week. Isn't that exciting?
Ooh, letters from you.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, definitely.
And in addition, what we might do is we might have as many Pocketnow editors on board as possible. So what might actually happen is that instead of just 3 people from Pocketnow on the show, we'd have, 5, 6, whoever can make it. So it might be a giant circus. It might be a complete...
It's going to end up like 2/3 of the way into an episode of Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where just the entire cast is shouting over each other for a good 90 seconds straight.
Right. It'll be like 85% of the other podcasts on the whole internet.
And you know, the cool thing about listener mail is you can censor whatever you want. So all those Jaime or Windows Phone hater mail, you just leave them
just
inside.
Throw them off. Yeah, all the expletive-covered attacks.
The spam filter.
That's right.
What are you going to do?
What else is... Just another couple brief announcements. The U-Review, the Pocketnow U-Review, will also be coming back next week, maybe on the same day if we do both these on Friday. There has been an unplanned hiatus of the Pocketnow U-Review, but we have so many cool devices, particularly in my office. I'm the spoiled brat this month, so I've got so many cool phones. I want to share them, so that'll be coming back. And
this month? Come on.
Well, I know. Well, we can't all live in Honduras. Seriously, you sent me a photo. Or no, maybe you posted on Instagram of like where you live next to that amazing vegetation-covered mountain, and the fog was covering it, and the sun was coming. It was just so idyllic, and I was like, well... Now I don't feel bad about getting this sweet device.
It seems like Michael lives next to like a train paddock and a high voltage switching station.
Exactly. That's exactly what I live next to.
First of all, this is pocketnow.com. This is not like mountainnow.com. So let's just switch.
Let me
bring you over to my world of vegetation, and I could take over your mountain of phones.
Guys,
we can deal with that.
Listen, number one. No, we need to negotiate further on that exchange. Number 2, mountainnow.com is available. You can buy it. So why don't you go ahead and do that? Let's start a sister site.
Seriously.
What'll it be about? Hiking? Will it be about mountain bikes?
No, just your mountain of phones, man.
That's all. Right. Well, you too can experience my mountain of phones in the next Pocketnow U-Review. Anyway, all that cool stuff is coming up and blah, 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 blah. But of course, the most exciting announcement, because it is the one that's coming up most recently, is that tomorrow is the Moto X event.
Yay!
Yes, the Motorola event in New York City announcing the Motorola X officially, and I will be getting my hands on it. I'll be heading down to New York City for that tomorrow morning at an absurdly early hour from a Boston train. And I believe our appointment is somewhere in the midday. They're doing it kind of differently this time around. I'll be telling you all about it. And then what are we doing immediately after, Jaime?
We're going to have this special roundtable, as we always do, but this is going to be interesting and unique on its own because usually we do the roundtable while the event is happening live and we get your feedback while you're at the event. But this time it's like, and I still find it weird that Motorola is not having, they've made us...
It's really weird, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they've created so much expectation for this phone, and now they're not going to have a press event for it. They're just going to have a hands-on. So that's kind of interesting.
Well, I wouldn't go so far as to say it's not a press event. Like it's an invitation only thing. It's there is no stage, is what you're talking about, right? They don't crowd everybody into an auditorium and say, "Here's a big show." But you know what? I appreciate that. The first event I ever attended was for the HTC One X last year, and it was an AT&T event. And they invited us into a hotel room, and that's basically what it was. But it was a nice hotel room. Don't get me wrong, but it was nice and intimate, and you just got to sit and chill with people.
Well, yeah, but the One X had already been announced in Barcelona. So
that's a good point.
Exactly. That's what they did when I got the Galaxy Note. It was just a little, 3 or 4 people in a room looking at it. But this was the U.S. launch after it had already been available for 3 or 4 months internationally. Moto X should be a way bigger deal.
Exactly.
Right. But I think that probably Motorola is very aware that this phone is not going to capture the hearts and minds necessarily of a large swath of the tech sector. I think they have a very concrete consumer plan in place for this, but I don't think I don't know. I agree with you, gentlemen. It is unusual. I don't think it says anything I don't think it says that they're doing anything wrong right at the gate. I mean, we'll see tomorrow.
No, and listeners, I guess the point we're trying to make here is. The good thing is Michael's going to have his hands on during midday, and then he's going to be joining our roundtable. So I guess the closest you can get to a live keynote of what really went on with this phone is if you join our special roundtable happening at 4:30 p.m. Eastern.
And if you haven't joined one of those before, it's a Google Hangout based discussion, and just the Pocketnow team on the air. But you can leave comments, you can ask questions, you can do all that stuff. And I'll be doing it from a sidewalk, gents. I don't want to be doing the Hangout from the venue because I'm sure I'll be thrown out by then. It'll be 4:30. It'll be 4 hours later. But by that point, I should also have some comparison videos up, a hands-on video, a few videos posted if I can get coverage wherever I'm going to be in New York City. So I might be joining you from a bench at a bus stop near Times Square, but I will be joining you, and it'll be fun.
Aisle 3 in a Dwayne Reed.
Yes, exactly. In the vitamin supplements aisle next to the 5-Hour Energy. Yeah.
Sure.
So, but while we're talking about that, so yes, join us for that. But let's talk about what we can expect from the Motorola X, from the Moto X tomorrow. We have a lot of links in the podcast post here. There's just, people call the Lumia 1020 the most leaked phone in recent memory, but, I don't think Motorola is at all interested in keeping the X terribly secret. We know a lot of the features here. We're seeing a lot of leaked photos. We're seeing photos of the devices in the wild. Google execs have had it out there, and we've just got so much information. Can we just like run down the highlights, guys? I mean, what is on my mind is that this is going to be a highly customizable phone.
Right.
It's going to be one that not only can you customize the base color, but probably also the bezel and trim. Like, there's going to be maybe some interesting materials used in the construction.
I don't know. We haven't seen any pics of that alternate bezel color action. We've seen white and black, but not, the green that we've seen for backplates. I'm not sure how that's really going to play out. You'd think we would have seen something, given all the leaks there have been.
Exactly. And honestly, I think it's just going to be a backplate thing. It's not really going to be what else can you customize from the phone? I mean...
Well,
seriously.
They've got that, what is that magic glass which wraps around the sides of the phone, which would make customization more difficult, right? If the glass obscures the bezel.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, magic glass, we've seen it on the One X. We've seen it on which Lumia was it that had this, rounded edges? I think it's the 920 and the 900.
Well, it's supposed to be something weird about how where the edge of the glass blends into the plastic. I know the first leak about it mentioned a special epoxy, and it wasn't really described in the manner of detail I'd like. So I have this fuzzy picture in my head, even after seeing the images of the faceplate. But I don't think it's something we've seen before exactly like in these other phones, but I'm not sure what to expect.
Yeah, I also have no idea what's going on here. I mean, Tony's news post for it just says it's what Motorola calls the front glass of the phone, which according to reports will wrap around the sides of the device. And it's like, all right, well, if that's the case, then we've sort of seen that before. But, I mean, we haven't, though, right? We've seen the glass blend in, like kind of pool at the edges and meet up with a plastic or a metal bezel, right? We haven't seen it like actually go all the way around the sides of the phone. So, and there's a good reason for that, because if you drop it,
it's going to hit glass.
I was about to say that's not really code for something smart, but hey, we'll see.
Right.
Let's see.
We will. Well,
as far as things we haven't seen before either, I just wanted to note those new pictures that Tony posted of the glass. I think it's the first time we've seen the upper right corner of the phone. It's always been blurred out in previous leaks. And now we can see a couple numbers and a little 2D barcode. I don't know if people, just because we're getting so close to release date, they no longer care about being the one identified as leaking this or what, but it's something interesting.
Right, yeah, that's interesting. Right below the cutout for the front-facing camera there.
Yeah.
I still don't know if I'm sold on that new Motorola logo in the upper left either. That's we talked about this a couple weeks ago on the show, and like, I don't know. We don't have to go over it again, but that.
Well, what new logo? It's not going to look like that on the finished one, is it?
Well, it is.
Yeah, because it's the same Motorola Batwing in the center, but it's surrounded by the
Batwing.
I'm pretty sure that the broken up ring is another identity thing, because it's been different on different leaks we've seen.
Oh,
and there is a company that does little. It's a QR code ripoff, but it does a company's logo and it has a circle around it, and you scan it in a magazine or something, and I'm pretty sure it's an identifying mark.
Okay, and that's not a branding. All right, well, we'll see tomorrow.
We will.
Yeah. What else? Now, this is going to be made in the U.S., we're pretty sure, right? This is going to be...
assembled in the U.S.
Oh, right. Yeah, so components imported and then assembled in the U.S., yeah.
And it's kind of interesting that they're able to. So I guess one of the points that's been happening with this phone is that apparently it's going to be an affordable phone. It's not going to be a flagship expensive phone. So it's interesting that Motorola has figured out a way to build the phone in the United States and keep the cost to the point where they can sell it as a mid-tiered phone.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, but in a mid-tier phone instantly conjures up images of these like kind of forgettable designs. But with some of the posts that some of the pictures we saw on Stephen, your post from the 26th, with the Moto X hardware rumors delving further into Android's design, like this kind of it looks almost curved. I mean, not almost. It looks completely curved on the back.
Around the back, yeah. People are worried it's going to be wobbling around, but then other leaks say no, it's just flat enough that it'll stay put.
It's so funny because I mean. If it wobbles around, it'll be no different than the HTC One, the Nokia Lumia 1020, a bunch of other phones I have here,
and an iPhone with a case.
Yeah, but
because nobody uses Bear.
Now, Jaime, you carried a Galaxy Nexus. I actually have your old Galaxy Nexus right here.
Yes, you
remember what it was like to carry a curved phone? It feels great. It feels great to talk on. It feels great to use in the hand. I'm very excited about this. And when Samsung released the Galaxy S3 with the suggestion of a curve on the bezel, but no actual curve in the hardware, I was like, get out of my face.
For example, one phone that I love the curve on is the Xperia ZL. It's very, very easy. It feels really good in the hand because of that, and because of the choice of the pattern texture at the back. It just feels really good in the hand. And I think that I noticed that there's this sort of a pattern in the Moto X as well.
What, a texture on the material?
A texture,
a little bit of one.
Yeah.
Well, and that'll change, right? Because some of those more outlandish rumors we saw early on with the Moto X was that it was going to have you could have a denim back on it or something. Right?
The thing is, at first I was willing to dismiss those as just mild speculation, but then recently Taylor Wimberly's been all over the place with these really spot-on Moto X rumors. He nailed that RGB-C camera before we heard about it on the Droid Ultra stuff, and he reiterated this multiple materials, things like wood or ceramic. Everything else he said has come to pass. So I'm really curious to see if he nailed that one too.
I am too, because I mean that would be compelling, right? If it's not just colors, it's not just like here's a different colored polycarbonate you can slap on there. Like if it was legit, bamboo. Or denim or whatever, whatever, like velour,
sandpaper,
or rhinoceros skin.
Yeah, exactly. Seal tusk. Do seals have tusks? Did I get that wrong? I don't know.
I don't know. I guess. Let's just hope these are not. Let's just hope these are not cases. Because if they're just
Yeah.
gonna, if they're replaceable backplates, then it's gonna be cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm backing up a second. I think it's really interesting that you two are so gung-ho about this idea of a curved back, because everything I've seen in commentary online has been people hating on this idea.
It's so funny because I will never understand the some of the eddies and currents in comments and commenters. Like we're in this technology field, right? And we all get really excited about new stuff. This whole industry runs on novelty. But it seems like the minute somebody breaks away from the traditional like slab form factor that's got all the rest of us falling asleep, everyone's like, "No, why isn't it just like the last one?" I don't know. It's very, very curious to me. I love curved stuff.
Yeah, I love curved backs. I mean, if you ask me if I prefer, the iPhone 4S or 5 design in comparison to the 3GS, I prefer the 3GS.
Oh, look at you boldly going there. That's interesting.
I love the curved back. For me, it was extremely easy to handle. It didn't slip off my hand. I don't know. It just felt comfortable. It felt really comfortable.
Should we touch on that camera real quickly? That RGBG. What is it?
Yeah, 10 megapixel RGBC, and I saw something yesterday. Apparently, it's going to have pretty large, well, not super large, relatively large pixel size. I'm not sure of the actual sensor size, but the pixels are supposed to be smaller than the one, but larger than the GS4s.
Our friend,
something like that.
Yeah, friend of the show, Stefan Constantinescu at Android Beat posted something really cool last night with a very, very click-worthy headline: Moto X to have a bit of Nokia PureView magic. Where he was reporting on, I think he was reporting on a Taylor Wimberly. Yeah, he was reporting on a Taylor Wimberly rumor that you were just talking about, Stephen. Talking about how this device will have a 10 megapixel sensor, but will use pixel doubling like the.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, or pixel over.
For video too.
Right.
1080p, 60 frames. That sounds awesome.
Which is awesome.
60 frames. Wow.
In the still category, though, the important difference being that the Lumia 1020 uses 7 pixels, the data from up to 7 pixels to make 1 super pixel, and because this is a smaller sensor, rumored on the Moto X, they'll be using 4:1 pixel enhancement. So,
right.
But
which
that
is
would
better
result,
than 1:1.
Which is better than 1:1, but it also would result in a 2.5 megapixel photo, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So
it's a Facebook photo, man. I mean, look at the banners, look at the ads. They're trying to focus this phone on teenagers, apparently. So
sure, no, I get it, but I mean, do you remember how much heat the HTC One caught for having a 4 megapixel camera?
And I'm still gonna give it some heat. Now the question is, does this camera have optical image stabilization?
I really doubt
I don't
it.
think so.
Yeah,
because that would completely explain the reason for the curvature at the back, for that hardware to fit in there, and that it happens in the one, it happens in the Line 20, and I would totally accept it on this phone. If you get good low light photography and if you get all the bells and whistles. I mean, 2013 is not a year for you to just bring out any camera.
I think we're looking at exactly the same component on the Droid Ultra Max Mini. And if we didn't hear anything about image stabilization when those were launched, I wouldn't expect to hear it for this guy.
I would agree, especially considering that this is still, Google owned or not, this is still Motorola we're talking about. And Motorola has never, ever been one to lead the pack on cameras.
And that's such an irony, because in the old days, I really loved photos from any Motorola phone, meaning from the V635 and from the Q9H. I had really awesome photographs from that phone.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I guess back in the day, the V710 or the V800 on Verizon had they had some of the first 2 megapixel cameras you could get on a phone.
The image quality was great. The color reproduction was awesome. For phones that old, I remember that Motorola used to lead that pack back in the day. So hey, it's great that they're coming back.
Maybe. Well, yeah, we'll have to see. Once again, we'll see tomorrow. I don't know. But since they've started with the modern smartphone iterations, everything from the Razr onto the Razr M to the Atrix I've just never been really overwhelmed with a modern Motorola camera. So
no, a lot of noise in those photos, definitely.
Yeah, and the same kind of wild swings in exposure and and
the video
stuff. Yeah. So anyway, we'll see. Go ahead, Stephen.
So are you optimistic this is finally going to reverse course for them?
It is so hard to say. If if we were seeing tomorrow as a huge event, like you guys were saying before, I think it would be really interesting. I think I would be a little more confident that the camera was going to be something. But hold on, let me just backtrack there.
Yeah.
I don't know. With this rumor of this pixel doubling, and I think they're going to bring something interesting. Now, whether it's going to be buzzwordy crap or actual improvement, I don't know. But it'll be interesting to see what they bring, and I have more hope than I have had before for their products, thanks to the Google-centric nature of this thing.
You know, if all that software, you know, that whole turn your phone on, calling it, and that processor, you know, honestly, as gimmicky as it may sound, you know, I think of that feature and I'm like, what's the point of Google Glass if I'm able to talk to my phone right there on the table and it'll tell me whatever I want without the need of having something stupid on my face?
So thank you for bringing
Something
that up, Jaime.
awesome on your face.
It's exactly right, jerk. No, you are absolutely right, Jaime, and that's something that I want to touch on before we move on. We have talked about this time and time again with voice commands, and a device that can intelligently listen to you all the time, wait for that cue, and just let you talk to it without hitting a button is definitely the next thing that's going to drive voice interface forward. Is it creepy? Yes. Might it destroy battery life? Yes. But God, it's the future. It is the future of sitting in a room and saying computer, and then there's something wakes up.
Well, and apparently that processor, you know, if we're talking about the specs of the phone, apparently the processor was designed to be able to do that. So this is a dual-core processor, but the point being is, you know, quad-core processors aren't really that great anyways, and apparently... Apparently, this processor has the specialty of allowing you to have tremendous standby time in order to be able to do that.
It's like what we'll be seeing with the Snapdragon 800, but without being as expensive or as otherwise powerful as the 800.
What kind of chip is inside this thing again?
This is that weird one they made. It's like
8X, 5X.
X8, yeah.
X8.
It's got a quad-core GPU, dual-core application processor, and then two specialty cores. One of them's this voice one of them's something else.
Wow, I did not know that. So I have a 4-hour train ride into the city tomorrow, during which I will be prepared for the experience. But I have been immersed in other phones for the past few days. So let's move on. Speaking of other phones, unless you guys have a closing thought on the Moto X, because we're going to talk a whole lot about it tomorrow. So we should probably move on.
Let's go.
Yeah. The LG G2, as Stephen Schenk says in a hilarious headline, is destined to disappoint. And I don't mean hilarious because it's inaccurate. I just mean it's quite on the nose. And I find myself sad that I can't immediately disagree with you, Stephen.
It's unfortunate, and I'm getting some flack for it in the comments there, but I think it's ultimately going to be true. I mean, LG... For an LG phone not to disappoint would have been a huge accomplishment. They always seem to find some way to just, I don't know, build quality, or the software lacks the polish of something Samsung comes up with. It needs to have this huge selling point, and I'm just not seeing that for the G2. It looks like the phone that anyone would make in this current smartphone climate. This is a phone you make with the components available at the moment. There's nothing... Nice.
You know, and I think the timing of what LG's been doing recently has been just bad. I mean, if you remember when the Galaxy Nexus was launched, and I'm going back a couple of years here, you know, it was not a groundbreaking phone, but that 720p display was unique, and so it was still an innovation happening. But then when you get the Nexus 4 is pretty much late for its time in just about everything. So that small opportunity that LG had to live some top of mind on their quality just totally went berserk with this phone. And so I feel that they lost a good opportunity with that Nexus 4, which is not going to push that G2 into a higher top of mind, sadly.
Let's make the point right now that the G2 has not yet been revealed officially.
This is true.
Now, that will happen on August 7th, and once again, I will be in New York City, this time joined by our very own Adam Lane. It'll be wonderful to cover an event with Adam. I haven't done that before, and that's when we're actually going to see the G2 for ourselves. We'll definitely, hopefully get some hands-on time, but we'll definitely see it. And that's when LG is going to either blow us away or disappoint us. But I think the point is that everything we're seeing coming out now, and LG has not been shy about sharing any
it's
details.
just like the Motorola. It's ridiculous this summer.
It is. It's like, well, we're officially going to announce it, sometime in the future. But hey, here's all the information now.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Right. And in addition, that includes accessories. And I think that's one of the annoying things about this to me. This Halo accessory that LG has started to push.
Rip off.
Yeah, exactly. What do we always criticize LG for? Ripping off Samsung. And this isn't the same thing as Samsung ripping off Apple. It's completely different because at least Samsung tends to put their own spin on their ripoffs. But LG, boy, man, I mean, they're not subtle about it at all.
No.
And the results, I want to make clear, the results are not always bad. I will say for probably the 55th time on this podcast, I really, really liked the Optimus G. I still like the Optimus G. We just gave one away, not only because Brandon was bored with it, but because it's a really great phone. It got a really solid score on the review, and it's beautiful, and it runs well, and it does a great job. So for that reason, yes, I'm excited about the G2, but man, this flip cover that they are pushing, it's like you took a Galaxy S4 flip cover, turned the window on its side, and released it in like 2 more colors.
I got to give them credit that the touch response.
So what
wake
is that?
From sleep. That's because that's an 800 thing, I assume.
What is that? What does it do?
It's that you can just touch that window without pressing the wake button, and the phone's going to start responding to you.
Okay, so there's a window cut out on the flip cover, and when if the display is off, you touch you touch it in the window, and the display wakes up.
But with the Samsungs, if I'm not mistaken, you had to press a hardware button to wake the phone, didn't you?
You do, or you can just open the flip cover and the phone wakes up.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is it's better, but it's still, like you said, it's a shameless rip-off of this.
Yeah. And listen, I will probably love this flip cover because, as we determined with the S4, I'm a flip cover fanboy for some reason when they have windows in them. So, yeah, but it's just one of those...
Especially at that price tag, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Especially at the very affordable $79.99 that Samsung was trying to charge.
You know what's interesting about that whole concept of that window? It's like in the old days of the flip phone where you could you could read your messages from the small display outside.
That's probably why I like it. That's probably because I hang out in the nostalgia section of our forums all day long thinking about the past. That's probably why I like flip covers.
Yeah.
I haven't even had a chance to be at our forums. Forums.pocketnow.com. Visit us. Shameless plug.
Visit us, and if you ask nicely, I have this video of a guy named Fisher snoring.
Don't do it.
Snoring like an animal in Vegas. If you're nice enough, I could probably upload it.
Mr. Rivera, have you ever heard of the concept of mutually assured destruction, sir?
It's called blackmail.
Yeah, it may be, but I have a similar video of a man named Jaime Rivera snoring his face off in that same city, coincidentally in that same hotel room. So
I am never falling asleep around any of you guys.
Don't do it. It's suicide. Anyway, this LG device is going to have a Snapdragon 800. That's awesome. A 1080p screen, also awesome, and a flip cover that's a ripoff, but might also be awesome. So we're going to check it out. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be what it's going to be. Thank you, Stephen, for reporting on it.
My pleasure.
And we'll be sure to cover that exhaustively. And
see if these rear volume buttons actually work, or if they're going to be completely unusable, as I'm worried about.
Yes.
If the phone were smaller, those rear buttons would make sense. But how well can you reach the back with your fingers? It's like, oh God.
I don't know. I mean, I don't see that being a problem. I actually don't have a problem with the back-mounted volume keys that some people do, but we'll have to see. I think it's a cool idea. It's definitely not one of those blockbuster things that sells millions of phones, but it's one of those things that makes you take a second look at it. Unfortunately, it won't do that in the retail store because all phones look the same in the retail store because they're all positioned exactly the same.
And probably my biggest concern with those buttons is, for example, in my case, I really care about not smudging the camera lens with my fingers because, I like to take candid photos and I don't want my back, I don't want the camera to be smudgy, and this is just going to be impossible with this phone.
Yeah.
Also, in some of the stores, they're going to put the big old anti-theft bracket right over the box.
I was just going to say that. Can you imagine all the epoxy that's going to get into those volume keys and those demo units? You're going to pick up a G2 in the store, and it's going to be just randomly throwing volume windows on the screen because it doesn't know what to do. Oh, that's sad.
Didn't that happen with with the Galaxy Nexus or something when it launched? There was a software bug that made the volume keep changing randomly.
Did it?
Nobody.
There
one
was
of those,
there was a crazy bug. I just don't remember what it was, but there was. It took a third version for them to figure out how to fix that.
Oh. Well, yeah, fun with bugs.
I
It's
think
better than the bugs that were in the Optimus View that had like so many typos in it that it couldn't even be described English in some of those dialogue boxes.
Come on, Michael. That whole phone was a bug.
I didn't post about it, but did you guys see yesterday rumors about the View 3?
No.
Yeah,
Are you serious?
They're saying, one, it's going to exist. Two, it's going to have a high-def screen, but it's going to keep that damn 4:3 aspect ratio, 1280 by 960.
And I just want to say it here. I find that absolutely ridiculous, and we have a Worst Gadgets Ever episode on this phone and blah, blah, blah. But in certain markets, as a commenter helpfully pointed out on that Worst Gadgets Ever episode, in certain markets like South Korea, that aspect ratio is actually favored.
What?
Yeah, for mobile TV viewing. Because that's the aspect ratio they still use. Yeah. So that's why it was pushed so heavily over there. Or I may be misquoting that. I know LG is a South Korean company. The commenter may have said something about Japan as well in terms of that. I'm not sure. But at any rate, maybe that's a justification for a third version of this coaster.
Maybe. I'm very, very skeptical of that. And if my keyboard wasn't super loud, I'd be looking it up to dispute at this moment.
Googling that ish. Yeah. Well, let's move on from LG and let's talk about the other big news of the week, which was actually, scandal rocks the tech world.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. The first indication I had that this story was coming up was Brian Klug, or I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Klug, over at Anantech, who is a very intelligent guy and writes some excellent stuff, tweeted something along the lines of, how much further down this rabbit hole can I go? And I was like, what are you talking about, Brian? And then I looked at his feed and I was like, oh, because Anantech was the one who first broke this story, I believe, that Samsung has been maybe or maybe not, but probably yes, optimizing its Galaxy S4 and other devices to perform better on benchmarks than in normal operating circumstances. They do this by overclocking, right? I'm looking at your story. Steven, this is you, yeah?
Yeah.
Not to mean overclocking, but they're running the
clocking up to the
benchmarks
max.
Yeah, at a higher speed than everything else seems to be.
Yeah, so the GPU normally runs at 480, and they're due to something called, what is it called, benchmark booster or something?
I don't know if that's the formal name, but there were some files on the device that have that text string and also have the names of all these apps where the boosting happens.
Like
so
Quadrant and LinPack and all that stuff. Yeah, and then boosting it up to its max, its rated max of 532 megahertz. And it also swaps over to what did you say, to its A15 cores when such an app is running?
Yeah, it's always going to be adjusting which cores it uses. But when it starts one of those benchmark ones, no matter what the actual load is, like even if you're just sitting on the menu screen, not actually using the processor, it's still going to activate all four of the A15s and clock them as high as they go.
Right. And now Samsung, after I made the rundown, but before the show started, Samsung actually officially responded to this, didn't
They did.
it?
They did.
And what did Samsung say?
Nothing that leaves me feeling much better about the situation. The response was posted in Korean, and the Google Translate was a little hard to read, but some much more legible translations make the case that Samsung's saying that no, this is absolutely a 533 megahertz GPU. It's just we have to dial it down to 480 because some of these games that are really pushing limits of the system are going to overload the GPU, which makes I know some about how these sort of things work, but enough to know that if you run the chip faster, it's usually going to have higher throughput and give you better performance. So I'm confused why slowing it down would avoid overloading it.
I wonder if they're worried about burning more people's houses down with overheating Galaxy S4s.
I find this scandal to be interesting. I mean, benchmarks have never been reliable ever since the dual core processor made it. Back in the day of the single-core processors, benchmarks were reliable, but it's known. I mean, every time that we get a new dual-core, quad-core, or 8-core phone, usually benchmarks never really hit the spot on the reliability of these phones. And, you know, I don't know. They're making such a scandal over this, and it's not like if this is...
It's one thing between the benchmarks not accurately reflecting phone performance and going out of your way to single out these apps as ones for which you will artificially boost phone performance.
Right. The thing is, Jaime was making a broader point that I will shamelessly hijack for a second. Taylor Martin wrote a piece for us the other day called Why Benchmark Scores Don't Matter. And this was a piece that I suggested based on something else I was reading elsewhere on the web, but also based on the fact that I hate, guys, when we're reviewing phones, I hate running benchmarks. I hate running them not because it's particularly stressful. It's not. It actually provides some really interesting animations on my phone screen, and it gives me a nice opportunity to film something interesting happening on the phone for the review video. But because it does not affect anything that I routinely do with a phone, because I'm not often pushing phones to their absolute limit as a personal user, and most people aren't either. And
with good reason, because when you do push your phone to the limit, that's when your battery's not going to last you through the day. That's when it's going to get super hot. We don't want to be doing that.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. And you know, more and more consistently, people of note, and not just people who are, you know, tech bloggers there are millions of us now, right? But, you know, reputable, established writers in the tech space are more and more frequently saying, no, benchmarks, it no longer makes sense to derive any meaningful performance data from benchmarks on mobile devices because of some of the variables we've talked about on the show. And, Stephen, you know some of how this stuff works. Jaime, I don't know where you stand. I know very little about this. All I know is a benchmark score has never governed whether or not I personally invest money in a device, and I don't really think it ever will, because to me it doesn't correlate at all to real-life experience.
For me, benchmarks have always been an after-the-fact purchasing thing. So I get the phone, then I'm going to install the benchmark software. I'm going to convince myself that I, use my money properly. Like, oh, my phone's it's beating all those last year models. Oh, I feel so good.
I'm just going to give you, as we say in my country, I'm going to give you the change right now out of all the investment. Man, every time that I would test that Tegra 3, it would look beautiful on benchmarks. Oh, and then once you started using that thing, I would just die, whether it was the Nexus 7 or the HTC One X. I don't care. I mean, I don't care about benchmarks. I don't even bother to run them because, honestly, it's pointless. What's the point about a processor like the Tegra 3 that looked beautiful on numbers and it performed so badly?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was the same thing with me with the US versions of, I think, the One X. Yeah, Brandon had brought the One X to lunch with him, the International One X, when we first met, and he let me play with it, and I was like, wow, this thing kind of lags, huh? And then I got the AT&T one with the dual-core S4 in it, and I'm like, wow, this is inferior in most benchmarks and most specs, but it runs better. And I think that's when the disconnect really started making itself evident to me. Now that's Crate versus Cortex or whatever, but I don't want to talk about it. No, not. Was I right on that? I don't know.
Yeah, you were.
I was right. Okay.
Yeah, the original S4 was Crate. Was the first. It was the second iteration, which was the version that included the Crate architecture.
Yeah. So anyway, this is exactly the kind of conversations like that, like what this conversation has become, are exactly what I hope to avoid by never using benchmarks again. Unfortunately, we still have to run them, I think. I don't think we've changed our policy on that, but I'm going to hate it.
I thought it was interesting in that Anantech write-up on the Samsung thing. They noted that they've moved on to other benchmarks. They don't even use the Quadrant or the mainstream ones. So maybe there is something to be gained by analyzing non-traditional aspects of performance. But like you said, in general, I can definitely appreciate your desire to just wash your hands of the whole thing.
Dump them.
And you know what's even funnier is
because they are important for gaming. Sorry, Jaime, but they are important for gaming.
Okay,
like Ice Storm and Ice Storm Extreme. I understand those are the 3D Mark tests. They're pretty.
Okay, try to benchmark an iPhone.
Yeah, no. No.
See, but still, which phone runs? You know, we've been talking about this with Brandon for the longest time. His favorite game is Asphalt 7, and so is mine. And we've tested it. We've tested it on every single phone.
Yeah.
Sorry, Steven. It wasn't a porn game. Sorry.
No, I hate it.
Sorry to disappoint you. Asphalt 7, that's our favorite. But the point being is, it's just funny. Try to benchmark an iPhone, and still Asphalt 7 runs best on the iPhone 5 than on pretty much every phone I've tested it on. And that's just the reality. So
that's interesting, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. You know, I hope that some intelligent conversation comes of this, not just in the comments or in our forums, but from an industry perspective. And we're gonna, we'll have a look at our benchmark policy moving forward, and hopefully we can find a nice middle ground. Because throwing the baby out with the bathwater is never a good idea. But we'll see. It was just interesting to see a manufacturer get beat up for it in the press, and rightfully so, I think. But it is also our fault as a body, as an industry, for I think leaning too heavily on these benchmarks from time to time.
We're the ones encouraging them to make these bad decisions.
Exactly. And and this is by no means the first time it's happened. Many other manufacturers have done it before. But I think we should take a look at this and realize it for the wake-up call that it is. But let's move on and close out Android, if that's all right with you, gents, and we'll talk just briefly about a device I think none of us is carrying. Right? The one
None of us?
None of us is carrying. I think the one guy who could answer some questions about this is the guy who's too good to join us on the air today due to his heavy workload. Taylor Martin's Nexus 7, the new one, according to Jaime Rivera, is finally an iPad mini competitor.
Why?
I'd buy that.
No, iPad competitor.
An iPad competitor. Oh.
Yeah.
Well, then, why? Jaime, you should tell us why.
See, up to for example, and probably the point that I was making in the editorial is, the top of mind right now is that the iPad is the best tablet, and I think Android has a lot of fault in that because of the problem there is in the ecosystem, and the fact that Honeycomb was terrible, the fact that applications still are not scaling well. It's just taken Android so long that people just don't want the drama, and they just end up buying iPads. And I remember when the first Nexus 7 was launched. I mean, they even if Google criticized the form factor of a 7-inch tablet, that was really the smartest solution for the whole app problem. The fact that you look for a tablet that has a portrait orientation, and that scales those smartphone applications in less of a horrible way. Go ahead.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but can I just say that's my favorite move ever. They're like, well, we can't fix this ecosystem. These are just still going to be phone apps scaling up to a tablet screen. So let's make the screen as small as possible.
Yeah.
I mean, that's awesome. I remember picking up my Nexus 7, and that's one of the main reasons I wrote that editorial almost a year ago about the Nexus 7 being my new best friend, because man, it solves that problem. It's like,
path of least resistance. Yeah,
exactly.
It did. But the problem with the Nexus 7 was, we remember the Tegra 3, we remember the display. It was just an affordable tablet.
Right.
So it did solve the app problem, but the problem is it wasn't really a high-end tablet. It was just an affordable tablet that it had a pretty design and everything, but it wasn't a groundbreaking high-end product. And we can't deny the fact that the iPad is high-end. I mean, whether it's the Retina display or the hardware construction, just everything about the iPad is high-end, from the applications to everything.
Including the mass, yes.
Including the mass, sadly, for now.
Yeah.
But I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that for the first time ever, I mean, Samsung still comes out with this terrible resolution on these landscape tablets. And yes, we've got the Nexus 10, but we still have the app problem. So
and the tabs and the notes. No, you're right about the resolution problem. My girlfriend was picking up the Tab 8 last night, 3.8 last night. And she's like, "Geez, the resolution on this thing is low." And I'm like, "Yeah, it is."
Exactly. And so the Nexus 7 is like the first high-end Android tablet because it's got better than Retina display resolution. It's got better resolution than the iPad. It solves the app problem. The construction's good. The display is finally up to speed. They're not using a Tegra 3 anymore, and they're keeping that price.
Mm-hmm. At $229.99, is that right?
Close enough.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're keeping that price. So I'm like, okay, I have no excuse to buy an iPad anymore.
That's fascinating. That's, I can't argue with you. I would love to get my hands on it. I will say this, Taylor Martin, is hard at work on the review, and that'll be out soon. I'm not going to give any spoilers on what his thoughts are, but I don't think he's thrown it out the window. I'll say that. So it's a good thing. What about you, Stephen? I know you're not necessarily the biggest tablet guy in existence.
No, I love tablets. I mostly think it's a big improvement. I'm a little confused about the choice of SoC, but if it, like the Moto X we're seeing now, it doesn't have to necessarily be the bleeding edge to be a worthwhile chip to power a modern device. I am a little upset about the Google Wallet thing, though.
Now, fill us in on the Google Wallet story.
Well, it has NFC still. You can use, Android Beam to send files to another device, but they removed the secure element. It's the hardware component that when Google Wallet's talking to a credit card terminal, it's the part that does the encryption. It's what stores your card details, so you don't have to have an active internet connection to use Google Wallet. And it was there on the first Nexus 7, and it's not there on the new one. And this is like a 50-cent chip and a tiny little, surface-mounted component. Just why?
You're gonna hate me for saying this, but I think that what Google did was just grab the Nexus 7 pattern and check on all the historical data of how many people actually used the tablet to make a payment, and understood that nobody did, and therefore they removed the feature.
Well, that's what I would have said about the camera.
50 cents.
With Nexus 7, the first one, they looked at, how many people take pictures with their tablet?
Well,
that's such a weird thing to do.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, the camera of the original Nexus 7 was not bad. It was terrible. The front-facing camera was just horrendous. So they couldn't get any data from the camera because there wasn't a back camera, and the front one was terrible.
But it feels like they already did that, the trimming of the fat when designing the first one. They said, this is a product that's not going to need a rear-facing camera. Then they're changing course with the new one. It's just weird how they're adding some things, taking away others.
It is weird. And I do wonder, you also wrote a piece, Stephen, called Is the Lack of Google Wallet on the Nexus 7 Evidence that Google's Abandoning the Project? Yeah. And it's a solid question to ask. Part of me says what you were saying. No one makes payments with tablets, and it was maybe dumb to have it on the Nexus 7 in the first place, right?
Yeah.
But part of me is like, we also haven't heard Google talk a lot about Wallet recently, and maybe this is going to go the way of, Google Reader and Wave and all that stuff.
And now, it's a new one.
Google
Catalogs.
Catalogs, right. What the hell was that anyway?
Who knows? By the end of the year, I think we'll have a better sense of where Wallet is heading. If it, doesn't show up on... if the Moto X can't do it, if whatever this next Nexus phone is, then I'd say we're in trouble.
Agreed. The Moto X is definitely the canary in the coal mine for a Google Wallet.
The question is, does this Droid Ultra lineup include the Factor, or is it gone as well? Because that's pretty much like the first phone that we should use as
I wouldn't judge based on that, though, because Verizon's always blocked access to Wallet. So I don't know if we can draw any.
True.
The Droid Ultra phones are I consider them more Verizon phones than Motorola phones, if that makes sense. Like there's so much carrier interference there. There's so much carrier dictation on features and specs. And I think Verizon just announced recently that that Motorola will be the only makers of Droid-branded equipment now.
Yes.
So that's crazy. So yeah, I wouldn't use those as a measuring stick at all. We'll see if the X has it.
Now I'll ask you one question, Michael, because I remember that one of your first videos in Pocketnow was actually an experiment over Google Wallet.
Yes. I was going to mention that. It was
at the CVS, was it?
Yeah, it was the CVS, the haircutting place, the bowling alley, the Dunkin' Donuts. Yeah, it was great, and I loved. Actually, that was my first video I ever edited myself for Pocketnow, and I edited it on an iMovie on my older MacBook Air. But no, I had a blast, and that's what I was thinking of while we were talking about it. Because listen, using Google Wallet is a lot of fun. Paying with your phone is fun as hell.
Or giant tablet, as the case may be.
Yeah, right, exactly. Now, paying for your tablet is probably just like taking pictures with your tablet. You look like an idiot.
Let me go take my tablet out of the backpack, and I'll be back to make this payment.
Exactly, right. No, it's like, that's stupid. But man, paying with your phone is a blast. So I really hope, just for the sake of living in as geeky a future as possible, that Google Wallet sticks around. I want to
know, what happened to ISIS? This was supposed to be the big carrier and financial institution-backed alternative that was being promoted to push Google Wallet out of the way. It's
Listen,
it's
the
nowhere.
Stalled too because everyone wants their cut. As I understand it, the big thing that's stalling all these initiatives is that the
But this
damn
was
credit card companies want their cut.
But ISIS was the cabal of all the credit card companies and the carriers. These are the ones who should have been succeeding.
Right. I'm sure they can't even agree amongst themselves. What they
That
want.
could be. Yeah.
You know.
I don't know. It's just for you to be able to hack a physical credit card, to duplicate the credit card, you physically need the card. The problem with phones, especially Android phones, is if you have a rooted phone, I mean, what are your guarantees that remotely your phone is not going to be compromised? I still feel skeptical about making payments with my phone.
Secure element.
Yeah.
That keeps any hacker from, they could, if they knew your PIN, they could still make purchases, but they can't read your credit card number off the phone or anything like that.
Right, but I think I guess it's a cultural thing is what I'm trying to say. I still see it. For example, I particularly, if I had the feature enabled, I remember I was with Brandon in Philly, and that was like, you remember, Steven, when I was there.
Yeah.
And that was like the first time we went to Best Buy, and that was the first time that I had actually ever seen somebody pay something with the phone. And I found it cool. I was just like, man, there are more probabilities that I could lose my phone than lose my wallet. So I don't know. I still debate it. I still think that it's a gimmick. It's a cool feature to have, but it's still at the gimmicky point where people still don't.
Yeah, there's no argument with you on that. It's still a gimmick at this point. But at some point, either the industry, the financial industry, and the technological side of things are going to get behind this, or they're going to get behind another form of it. And I do hope it's Google Wallet, because I think Google stands the best chance of implementing it properly. But given their current trend of canceling anything they get bored with,
yeah, that's true. That's a big problem.
Yeah,
or can't monetize. They don't seem to be making any money off of Wallet besides knowing what you're spending on.
Right. But that's value. That's way valuable to them as well.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So
yeah.
We'll see
if people would use it actually.
Right.
There's the rub.
Well, let's move on that closing note of Google stuff and talk a little bit about Windows Phone. We just have two things to talk on Windows Phone, two things on iOS, then we can get to listener mail and cruise. Jaime, how are you on time? You got 10 minutes for us?
Yeah.
All right, cool. I want to let everyone know that the strangest comparison I've ever done, the HTC 8XT versus HTC One, is up. Actually, that's probably not true. I've done stranger comparisons, but this one was just particularly inapt. But it just hit me in the middle of the head. I was like, the 8XT, it's Sprint's first Windows Phone 8 device ever. It's HTC's newest Windows Phone 8 device. It's the only Windows Phone device with boom sound, and it's out. And I wanted to cover it a little bit before the full review came out, so it's compared to the One. And guess who wins? It's the high-end device. It's a video that I recommend you watch.
Yeah.
The colorful chassis didn't win you over?
Yeah, so here's the thing, very quickly. This is not a dig on HTC, because this has happened with almost every manufacturer I've reviewed, but it's really unfortunate when the first review device you get is defective.
Oh,
and that's
no.
what happened to me, yeah. So thankfully, HTC was awesome. They sent me a new one immediately, and I just got it today. So I've moved everything over, but for the comparison, I just used everything that was not defective. So, with our comparisons, we can tweak them a little bit. If we don't have enough battery information yet, we can say, we don't have this yet, but check the review, blah, 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 blah. So we did the camera, we did the hardware, and the little bit of the software, and blah, blah, blah.
What didn't work?
It was like the phone was possessed. Yeah, like apps would crash. It was the laggiest Windows Phone experience I ever had, and that's why I knew it was broken. Because I'm emailing other people at other sites, like our friends at other sites, and I'm like, guys, your 8XT, how is it? Is it laggy or whatever? And a lot of them are like, well, it's a little laggy, but it's not like a big disaster. Like, what's your problem? I'm like, dude, this thing is, oh my god! And I couldn't listen to music for more than 5 seconds without the sound just exploding in my ears. It was horrible.
That's
right.
awful.
But because it's a defective unit. I want to make it clear, once again, listeners, this is not because the 8XT is that way. It's because I had a crappy defective unit. But it robs a lot of time from your review process, obviously, when that happens. So I have my new one. I am getting used to it today. I'm testing all the features that were broken on the defective one, and the review will be up very soon. But the 8XT is beautiful California blue, as you say, Stephen. And guys, having boom sound on a Windows Phone device is really, really cool. It is nice having forward-firing speakers with a lot of bass and a lot of amplitude on a Windows Phone. So I will say
I can imagine.
Yeah, it's really great.
But other than that, is there anything other than that?
Yeah, there is actually, because you know how Windows Phone, outside the Lumia 1020, we've always complained that Windows phones have the same stock camera viewfinder, and that doesn't let you really do a lot, and it sucks at letting you know what shooting mode you're in. Well, HTC has ported their excellent viewfinder app from the One, basically, to the 8XT. So while you can use the original Windows Phone shooter, you also can use the HTC camera. And it is heavy software. It's not terribly responsive, but it's got the same persistent shutter and record buttons on the screen all the time. It's got their filters. It's got HDR. It's got a bunch of contrast saturation stuff. And in video, you can shoot at 60 FPS. You can do a bunch of cool stuff. So that's pretty cool.
That's worthwhile, yeah.
Yeah. But this phone probably should have been called the 8ST, not the 8XT.
I was about to say, I mean, the phone is not really an 8X.
No, it's really not. Just the screen. Really. I mean, look, yeah.
Was it WVGA?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it's pretty rough on the screen. But there's a high-end device that deserves maybe a little bit of our talk before we move on, and that's everyone's favorite yellow Pocketnow sidearm, the Lumia 1020, which Taylor and I have been using a lot.
Shut up.
And
Shut up. Where's my review unit?
You'll have to. Actually, we got our review unit from the good people at AT&T, so I cannot tell you. We're having some communication issues with other people. But listen, here's the thing: should we be concerned about the Lumia 1020 because of its sales figures on one particular site? Stephen Shank, your thoughts?
Oh, man, I got so much flack for that post. Basically, if you haven't read this, it's that we're trying to get an early assessment of how the 1020 is doing because everyone's putting so much on its success or failure. Mm-hmm. So an early way to get a look is to check out Amazon's sales rankings. So Amazon will show you, like, AT&T, all of the best-selling phones currently. And so at the top, we have models like the One. Galaxy S3 is actually higher than the Galaxy S4, surprisingly.
Because it's cheaper
pricing.
now.
Yeah.
No,
Bunch of Windows Phone.
Yeah.
And the 1020, it was at number 13 on Monday. But then you would expect a new phone to, build a little momentum over the first couple days. But instead, it dropped back to like 20, 25. I checked a little later in the day after posting that, and it had moved back up. It was at 24. I think it was up to 20 then. So it's showing some momentum, but it's a lot lower than you would hope a phone that's as hyped as this, that has so much running on it.
So which list are you looking at? Because there are many bestsellers lists on the Amazon thing. Maybe you said this a second ago, but
this was just AT&T.
Oh, just AT&T.
Phones,
okay,
yes.
So cell phones and accessories updated hourly. So this is what it's at right now. The Nokia Lumia 920. Okay, so the Nokia Lumia 1020 is back up to 13 right now.
Okay, that's promising.
And
that's good.
It is followed immediately by the 920 at number 14. Go ahead, Jaime.
Is the 900 still higher?
No, the 900 is not there.
Thank God.
I guess following Steven's concern, if you all remember this, listeners, I mean, the Lumia 920 sold out. I don't know how long it took me. I could not. Okay, so I was in the U.S. when the phone launched, and I couldn't buy it. It was sold out everywhere.
Whoa.
It was sold out everywhere, and it was
Even
just
on
like
Easter Sunday. Oh no, that was the 900. Yeah,
that was the 900. This was in the fall of last year,
right?
And I went to Best Buy, I went to AT&T, I went everywhere. I tried buying it online. It was sold out everywhere just a couple of days after the launch. So, okay, when is a phone supposed to be hot? It's supposed to be hot on the first days when it's launched. That's when the hype is built. That's when the ads are there. That's when all the investment is happening. And so, should we be concerned? I'm sorry, but I am concerned. I am. I do feel sad that this is not going to be the haven for Nokia because this phone really is worth the money.
One fair criticism I've heard of these complaints is that a lot of people might be preferring to get the phone in a brick and mortar store or from somewhere like Microsoft where they can get the camera grip accessory for free.
Yeah.
Yes, which is what I did.
But I went through the Amazon ordering thing, and it has a pretty good discount on the phone. You can get it it was offering it to me for $270. Which is, as far as I know, the cheapest I've seen for just the phone.
$30 less than the on-contract price.
Yeah, so I'm not so sure that's why people are staying away from Amazon. But
Yeah.
it might be just too early. I don't know.
Right, and it's also a single point of reference. But it's interesting when I look back on my history, looking at the Amazon bestseller list, and like that was what that was our haven in the underdog sectors for like WebOS. It was like, what's the Veer doing right now? Is it on? Where's? Oh, it's really high on Amazon. That's awesome. And like the Lumia 900 was way high on Amazon.
Yeah, it's number 25. It's really high.
No, the Veer was high for a bit.
How high did the Veer ever go?
I don't know.
No.
Hey guys, we hit triple digits.
Admit it, number 25.
Well, whatever. Maybe it wasn't the Veer. Maybe it was the pre. It wasn't the pre 2 because that never saw a sale in the U.S. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is, it's a tricky thing, as you say, Stephen, to forecast total sales. It's just an indication, and anyway, we'll see. But I think the phone's high price and its kind of nature as a one-trick pony, a very awesome one-trick pony, but a one-trick pony, will keep it from wide adoption overall.
Can we just revisit that phrase for a second? A one-trick pony could be a very good thing. What if that one trick is like, I don't know, it can poop out $100 bills? That's a pretty good trick.
An awesome trick, right? Or really amazing photographs. That's a great thing too. I want to be clear. I am not regretting my purchase at all. But I love my one-trick pony or my warthog. As it were.
I was all ready to yell at you about that headline. I guess when
because of the capitalization.
I was watching you like write that in draft. I'm like, is this going to be about the animal or about the plane? Animal or the plane?
So you were only going to yell at me if it was about the animal. Is that right?
I didn't want to get ahead of myself.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I don't know if I've announced that or not. The Lumia 1020 review is up. That was up last Friday at midnight. So if you missed it, go check it out. I did enjoy that analogy. That might be my favorite analogy I've ever used.
I'm just upset you didn't use the picture of the VW Bug next to the A10's giant cannon for scale. It's ridiculous. The gun's larger than the entire car.
I know, but that's it just leapt to my mind, and I love that plane and I love the phone. So, moving on to iOS before Jaime has to depart. The latest budget iPhone photo is just one of the ugliest things I've ever seen, and I hope it's fake. What do we think?
Which photo are you talking about? The photo
of the boxes, because that one is interesting to me. The casing photo from your store in July 26th with the FCC label. We're seeing listeners it kind of looks like you took the wafers off an ice cream sandwich, but the ice cream inside stayed in the same form, and
like shellacked it so it's nice and shiny.
Yeah, right. It's like if a Klondike bar was white instead of black and lengthened.
Okay, so that looks like a cheap case. I don't know.
Doesn't it?
It's tough. Okay, so for the record, everybody, Apple has never submitted the iPhone to FCC approval before it gets approved. I mean, before they announce it.
We haven't seen the paperwork.
Well, okay, so nobody, Apple is supposed to go through the process just like every other company, meaning, they have to submit the phone to the FCC, and it has to go through the same process where everything is public. It's legal. It has to be public. So, we would already be getting the documentation. That's why I call this fake.
Yeah, and it actually has been called out fake by a bunch of people in the comments, some of whom are now blacklisted because they couldn't refrain from calling us foul names. So, but the thing is, like, I'm glad that this is most certainly not real. What about the other one? What about the one that's more interesting to me?
But wait, this is only the FCC bit was new here. We've seen the same hardware in previous pics. So even if the FCC bit is fake, the actual phone there very much could be real.
Well, but look at the one look at the link that the first commenter is talking about here, where it links to the images of the.
I mean, look at those letters. That looks so cheesy. It doesn't look like an iPhone. Come on.
Yeah, it really doesn't. Like, it's I don't know. I mean, this is why, Jaime. This is why I wanted to throw you a bone or two, because as our resident Apple expert, I'm very.
It's not going to happen, especially with this phone. Specifically with this phone, it's not. That's not it. It's too early within the process, by the way. Apple is definitely not going to launch phones until October in their music event. So late September, early October. And usually what they do, they announce it, they immediately send it to the FCC that same day when they announce it. It gets approved in a week, and that's the reason why it takes 10 days for Apple to start selling their new generation iPhone.
Okay. All right. So what's the story on the packaging on the other one? Because
Okay,
this is the one that's more interesting to me.
Okay,
Everyone thinks it's fake, too.
so the packaging is fake. Go ahead.
What, Steven?
Everyone thinks that's fake too. So.
Okay, the
I'm
packaging.
sure a lot of this is not right.
The packaging is clearly fake, but remember that Apple does a lot of prototyping, so they most likely did a prototype of the box, and you never know. I guess probably it's funny because I asked this question of the day on the Pocketnow Daily yesterday, the day before yesterday, when this news broke, and I am not kidding you. I have 1,157 comments on YouTube over what the C of iPhone 5C stands for, because Digitimes is reporting that the 5C, that the name is real, and Digitimes is rarely ever wrong.
Digitimes is wrong all the time.
Well, yeah, but they're right most of the time. They're right most of the time. So I guess the point being is, and we'll leave this as a question for everybody. What does the C stand for? Stephen, what do you think it stands for? So, for example, the iPhone, ever since
the S was speed, and
that's been the thing ever since. Yeah, that's been the thing ever since the Apple II. There came an Apple IIs.
There was no Apple IIs. There was the 2E, 2C, and 2GS. And the 2 Plus.
Ooh.
Well, which was the Apple product that had an S before? There was one. That's where the moniker was born, and that's the reason why we got the iPhone 3GS, which was speed. And Steve Jobs actually even mentioned it on the keynote. So we got the iPhone 4S. We're expecting the iPhone 5S, which should be more speed. But the question is, what the heck does the C stand for? And everybody was like, it stands for cheap. It stands for
crappy.
Yeah, it stands for. Are we censored here?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah. You would read these comments, and you would just. Whenever you're having a bad day, just go to our YouTube comments, please.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's like the best way. That's like the best way to unstress yourself.
I've been surprised actually at how civil the YouTube comments have been overall. But we will have to see what this is. I think if this is legit, this name, iPhone 5C, it has to be for the budget one. It can't be associated with a high-end device. If all we see for this next Apple hardware iteration is iPhone 5C, I don't know. Guys, am I alone in this? C just sounds like such a lame letter.
It's because it sounds like it's giving it a grade. It's the iPhone average.
Yeah, it does.
iPhone try harder next time.
iPhone 5 copyright. It's like, what? So, whatever. I guess, I don't know. I'm going to get excited about it. I will say once again, this is going to be the first phone iPhone I wait in line to get.
Really?
Yeah, well, assuming Brandon approves it. I think he was down with my idea on this. But I haven't owned an iPhone since the 3GS in 2008. And I think it's going to be worthwhile now that the OS has seen such a thorough revamp, or is in the midst of one. I think it's worthwhile to explore what's changed since then and what might bring people back to the iPhone now that, not that everyone's leaving iPhone, but scores of people really have left the iPhone ecosystem for the Android one. I mean, we see this in the numbers.
And still their numbers keep growing year over year. It's just interesting.
They do, but the thing is, back at the last time I owned an iPhone, it was the thing to have. There wasn't this iPhone backlash of like, oh, it's boring, oh, it's lame, oh, it's too small. Like, it was hot. The only people complaining about it were the Windows Mobile dorks.
Okay, so for the record, when I made the announcement that I was going to be our resident Apple guy, I think it was like 400. I think that's like a record, like 450 or 500 comments, where everybody was like, "Oh, Kool-Aid."
Right, right. That was our audience back then. That was when we were Pocketnow, the Microsoft fan site, right?
Exactly, and that's that's just, I guess, the point that I'm trying to make is there's always been the iPhone haters. That was back in the day of the 3GS when that happened, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah, in our sector, yes.
What do we think about the idea that this 5C might replace the iPod Touch in Apple's lineup?
Oh, wow.
Okay, so here's and that's a really interesting question.
Yeah, it is.
So for the longest time, you remember when we had the rumors of the iPhone 5 back in the day when the 4S was launched, and it turned out that the design that was used and that was being leaked of the phone ended up being the iPod Touch 5th generation. So the design was real. The prototype did exist, but it ended up falling into the iPod Touch 5. So honestly, I feel that there's a market. I mean, right now they're doing this whole FaceTime voice thing on iOS 7. It just seems like if Apple is trying to figure out a way to, disconnect their dependency on carriers. So, hey, I mean, if I got a voice over IP phone where I could just buy a data-only plan and Apple figure that one out, why not? I mean,
it seems like a hell of a leap for them.
It does. And the technology is not there, by the way, listeners. I mean, if you try to make a voice over IP call driving, it just won't go through. It'll go through, but eventually the speed of the vehicle will disconnect you from your data link.
The handoffs are not as elegant as they are in voice. Yeah.
They are not as elegant on data as they are in voice, even on LTE. And we're still not in LTE Advanced, where apparently that's going to change. So I do feel that there is a point for that. I mean, the iPod Touch it's the best-selling iPod. Yes, it is. But it keeps losing a reason for existence as the iPhone, especially if they drop the price on this phone somehow. It's just going to lose.
It's going to have to be crazy cheap to pick up where the iPod Touch left off, because it's always been the budget way to get involved with iOS.
Exactly. So, right now the iPod Touch, I think it's $300, with taxes and everything, the lowest iPod Touch 5. And if you get a cheap iPhone that's going to be closer to that price, what are you going to pick?
The thing is, the iPod Touch used to be my at-home tablet back before the first iPad, consumerized tablets. The iPod Touch was what I used at home when I wanted an iOS app experience and Wi-Fi, and I just wanted to browse around the house.
Right.
Now that the iPod itself as a music player has been largely, made irrelevant by iPhones and other smartphones, and as a tablet, it's just way too small compared to what else is out there, including the iPad Mini, which is very affordable, and the Nexus 7, which is even more affordable. I don't see that it has a reason to exist anymore.
Yeah.
And I wonder what its sales figures are like, but I don't have that data. So, anyway, yeah. Stephen, Jaime, who was that?
I don't know. I think that there is a compelling reason for that thought to be true. There is a compelling reason for that to happen. I just think that the technology is not there yet for an iPod Touch or a disconnected phone from carriers that you could pretty much just use for voice over IP. The technology is being built into iOS 7 with FaceTime voice, which I was. It's funny. Don't laugh. I was in the shower thinking last time. I was like, FaceTime voice. Where did they come up with that name? Why did they call it voice time or call time? It was like FaceTime. Where is the face?
Well, it's like chat heads.
I'm like, where is the face in the voice call? Seriously, I'm like, swap the name, people. Come on.
Well, it's because you're getting FaceTime with someone, right? Like having a meeting, you're getting like some one-on-one FaceTime.
Exactly, but you're not really being, a FaceTime voice. You're not being able to actually see the person.
Okay.
So
yeah, it's pretty whack. There's too much going on with that. Let's stop talking about it.
Stop.
Yeah.
What I want to do is actually move on to listener mail, and I want to ask Jaime Rivera if he has to go or if he's going to join us.
I think I can still stretch that.
That's lovely. So,
bless your heart.
That's wonderful, isn't it? A brief note on listener mail for this week. We already made the announcement about the special edition episode earlier on. I've since gotten an email indicating that I'm not the only one who thinks that's a good idea, so that's probably going to happen. But the three we're going to read are not the oldest on this episode. They're just the ones that fit this group of people, as it always is. And guys, really appreciate you writing in, but we do have to get to new people over people who've already written in. It's not to say F you to our old followers, to our loyal listeners, but it is to say that new people deserve the airtime as well. So, with no further ado, let's jump into listener mail. Hello, Pocketnow podcast crew, says John Blake. I first want to say thank you for the opportunity to participate in the LG Optimus G giveaway contest. John, thank you for participating, and listeners, thank you again, everyone, for participating by leaving us reviews on iTunes, which help us out. Do appreciate it. My question, says John, is now that the Galaxy Note 3 is rumored to have an LCD screen, along with the usual AMOLED, do you think that Samsung is going to make a Galaxy Note 3 active in an attempt to make another branch in the Galaxy lineup? Also, do you believe Samsung will profit by having the two options, or should they just combine the active build into their flagship models from now on? I look forward to hearing from you. Sincerely, John Blake. John, this is a cool question, man.
It's a weird one.
The answer is yes. That's what's going to happen.
Well, which one?
Well, there are how much was it, Stephen? Like 5 different variants of the Galaxy Note 3. Different device models being rumored. And
yeah, they're talking about, I think it was 4, one like a super premium, and then LCD. Right.
Exactly, and one of them had an LCD, and the other ones were AMOLED, and one of these devices had a smaller camera than the other one. So this is pretty much an active. That's just the way it's going to be. And do you think that it's smart for Samsung to profit from these phones? Yeah, I feel that all phones should be active, but then again,
I agree.
But technology is still not at the point where there's this new news post today where Galaxy S4 actives are already drowning for users because it requires, for it to be active, it requires special procedures for you to ensure that it doesn't drown. And you should watch Michael Fisher's review video for all the specifics on those procedures. So yes, I want that to happen, but I don't think the technology is there yet.
I'm a little confused about this question. Basically, why the LCD versus AMOLED issue factors into it being waterproof or not.
Because the Galaxy S4 Active has an LCD, whereas the Galaxy S4 has
but
AMOLED.
That's not a factor that waterproofing has any
it's
say
not,
on.
But it might be a clue is the only thing.
Oh, okay.
They tended to go with cost-saving measures on the active versions, and
exactly.
Gotcha.
Exactly.
So, what do you think, Steve? I mean, do you think that it's likely, and is it exciting to you?
No, I wouldn't bet on it at all. I think that the waterproofing is a feature we're just going to see on smaller devices. I don't think that we're going to see. There's probably waterproof tablets, haven't there?
Yeah, the Xperia Tablet Z is waterproof.
The Z is okay, but I don't think it's something that's going to take on nearly as passionately as users are responding to these waterproof phones, because you don't want to damage your phone. You carry it with you everywhere. Tablet is going to be exposed to a lot less. And even though the Note is closer to phone than tablet, I don't see it getting into these same situations. I just don't think there's going to be a demand for it.
So I don't know. I don't know, Steven.
I would say
think about this, Michael. Think about this scenario. Think about the S Pen being able to work when the display is wet.
Yeah. So that's actually the point I was going to make. So the Note 3, first of all, is going to be, Stephen, you said it a little bit. It's going to be a phone that somebody buys on contract, and they're going to carry as their smartphone. They're not going to use it as a tablet. But I would normally agree with you that maybe there is not much overlap between phablet users, the phablet market demographic, and people who need an active phone. I'd probably say that there's very little overlap there, actually. But then Samsung has never been one to exhibit any kind of restraint.
No,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, this is Samsung we're talking about.
Exactly.
This is not Apple.
That's the second point. And the third point is, Jaime, very, very good one there. People were saying on the Galaxy S4 Active review in the comments, when I'm complaining about the lack of wet finger tracking, making that screen useless when it's even the slightest bit wet. It just doesn't respond. Someone very, very intelligently suggested, well, what if it had an S Pen? And I was like, oh my God, yes, that would be amazing. Because the S Pen
would that work underwater? I wonder.
Probably not in its current iteration, because it uses a mixture of induction along with that the Wacom digitizer and something else. But so it would need a modification. But wouldn't that be great? That way they wouldn't have to implement wet finger tracking if they didn't want to, but you could just use the S Pen if you were underwater with the thing, and it would work great.
But I'm saying I'm not sure it could even work at all, because I don't think the induction is going to work underwater, period.
No, I'm sure it would require a special S Pen, yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Just remember that actually it's the S Pen that generates the touch, meaning it's the software detects the pen. You can't just use anything. Right. It has to be a specific S Pen.
Absolutely.
Like, for example, and do this test. Get the S Pen close to the display and push the tip of the pen, and the phone will respond to pushing to the tip without it even touching the display.
Oh, right. Yeah. So no, I mean it would require a special take on the thing. But listen, I think that S Pen theory is probably the most far-fetched bit of it. I don't see Samsung putting the effort into making a special S Pen for this kind of weirdo thing. I imagine it'll be a lot like the Galaxy S4 Active, just in a larger size. And I'll tell you what, guys, I would buy the hell out of that.
Okay, just think about this, Michael. Just think about an ad where you have this actor in his helmet and boots in a construction site under the rain.
Yeah.
And he's just supervising what's going on, and then he pulls out his Note 3 with the S Pen, the phone completely wet, and the guy is able to use the phone within that scenario. That is going to be the ad that's going to sell that damn phone. I mean, if they figure that out, that's going to be... They're going to make waterproof usable.
Bonkers. And also, Jaime, to be completely accurate, you should impose some out-of-place string music over that and put like a gray filter on it, and also put in some unfunny snark. And that would be a real Samsung commercial. Yeah.
Exactly.
So
while we're talking about waterproof devices for a moment, I just want to mention, because it was too minor to cover in news, but I thought it was interesting. Someone over on XDA came up with a neat hack for the Xperia Z to let you take pictures underwater by using the phone's proximity sensor as a shutter.
Nice.
Oh, wow. So you can sort of cover
it.
You tap it with your finger, and it detects the duration of how long it's been covered up for, and registers it as a button press.
Oh, that is very cool.
Very innovative.
I mean, I like that as like an evidence of how the community can be awesome sometimes, but I really like it when manufacturers think ahead. Yeah, whereas on the Galaxy S4 Active, you just use the volume rocker, and that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
The next thing they have to solve, though, is underwater photos now need to be better, because whenever you put these lenses underwater, everything's out of focus underwater. So
one thing at a time.
And you can't tap to focus.
Right. Yeah, it's true. So, John, thank you for that. I'm just writing down that little something there. John, thank you for your question. That is going to be awesome. I really look forward to seeing what comes of the Galaxy Note, the new Galaxy Note family, if there is to be a family, which we're pretty sure there is. And really cool question. Thanks a lot, John. Next one is from Jamie Somerville. Hi, Pocketnow team. Thank you for answering my previous reader mail question. And, Jamie, thank you for blowing away my justification for not answering the other repeat writers in. Sorry, guys. I live in the UK, so don't know much about U.S. mobile networks. So my question is about carrier branding on phones. Most of the flagship phones from the big companies like Samsung, HTC, and Nokia all have carrier branding on them, and also carrier splash screens. If you get them on contract from their respective carrier, the only exception is Apple. They never have branding of any kind on their phones or in the software. I wondered how they managed this, and other companies have not. Big fan of the great work.
They have videos of all the carrier executives snoring and blackmail them.
Okay, so I guess
That's how you get things done in this world.
I guess Apple did something that no company had done before, and all these companies followed. I mean, they would not launch a phone until they found a carrier that was willing to do what they wanted.
Right.
Meaning
Verizon said no at first.
Verizon said no. They first approached Verizon and they completely denied. And if you remember, there was this Motorola iTunes phone that I believe was launched exclusively on Verizon.
Yeah, the rocker. It was on AT&T.
Okay, but because that phone became a flop, that's the reason why why Verizon pretty much turned them down. So it's really interesting that all Apple did was create a business model and sell it to AT&T, and they sold it so well that AT&T was willing to invest on the iPhone. They invested money on that project up to the point where they kept exclusivity on that phone for 3 generations, pretty much 4 generations. Mm-hmm. And I guess the point being is Apple just proved that the system works, that people don't care about the carrier branding, that people want a product because of, other reasons. And, other companies followed the trail with the Galaxy S3, for example, which was the first one. And I guess it's just, how was Apple able to pull it off? Well, they just showed that it worked. That was the condition.
And you're making a good point there. Like, Jamie, you should know that in the States, it is becoming somewhat more common not to have carrier branding on some devices. Sprint didn't do it. I wrote a small piece about how Sprint didn't have any carrier branding on the HTC One.
Right.
And they also didn't have any on the S4. But Sprint's official comment on that was that, we don't brand it so that if we want to make it a prepaid phone, if we want to give it to one of our other brands, dispatch some of our inventory elsewhere, we don't have to then remove the silk screening and do a whole bunch of stuff. So sometimes it's a practical decision on the carrier's part these days.
Yeah, and I think that carriers are understanding more and more that, they should just focus on their network, like Apple said at some point. Do you focus on your network? I'll focus on the hardware.
Yeah.
In the end, it's a power play. And I think
It
it's
is.
interesting. If you look at, there's like a bell curve where the really, really low-end phones, carriers aren't even interested in, once you have to buy on your own and bring to the carrier, those don't have any branding.
Yeah.
Like the middle of the phones, they're all going to have the branding. And then when you get as powerful as Apple or, HTC is becoming with Sprint, once again, you see no branding.
Mm-hmm. No, and then let's remember something very important. Apple wasn't not even the shadow of the company that they are now before the iPhone. It was the iPhone that pretty much made the company what it is. If you look at Apple's stock when the iPhone was announced, I think the price of the stock was like $27. It's currently at 411, but it's already skyrocketed to 730. And this was, this raise all happened after the iPhone. So Apple did not have the power that they have right now. I guess that what they did was found the really nice CEO that was willing to sit down with Steve Jobs and have Steve Jobs play his magic and, just completely, just grab the guy and put him in his pocket. But let's not forget the fact that, the iPhone was kind of groundbreaking. I mean, when you pulled that phone and you started using it, I'm sure that the CEO, was just off his BlackBerry back then, his Pearl most likely.
Was Ralph De La Vega the CEO of Singular?
No, it was this other guy, a Texan. I mean, the guy had a really deep Texan accent. I forget who the guy was. Yeah. But, I can just imagine the guy just putting his BlackBerry on the table and grabbing that iPhone for the first time and just flick scrolling because it was the first phone that did those things. It was so stupid, but it was. Yeah. I just imagine the guy being so blown away that he was like, okay, let's do it. Let's do it your way. I trust you.
Yeah. I wish I could find that. I wish I could do some Google magic and find that CEO's name, but I can't. But anyway, while we're talking about splash screens, Singular CEO Stan Sigman. That was his name.
Yeah.
Sounds like a superhero.
I was just going to say that's a lot of alliteration for one phrase. I don't want to miss out on this, but we do have to move on. But just finally, with regard to carrier splash screens, I've told this tale before, but I was floored to find out that when I got my unlocked from the factory BlackBerry Z10 at the BlackBerry launch event, it had a normal BlackBerry splash screen, but the minute I put my AT&T SIM in, it displayed an AT&T splash screen.
And it does that here in Honduras. You remember?
I didn't know that.
I brought it here. I put in a Claro SIM card. Immediately, it gave me the Claro splash screen.
Now you gotta wonder, right? Like, is the data for the splash screen stored locally on the SIM, or is it stored on the device and the device displays it?
It's a network thing. I mean, think about it. I mean, I'm in Honduras, man. What is BlackBerry going to be adding splash screens from a carrier that's all the way down under?
Maybe it has splash screens for every carrier.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning to them being already on a device there.
Yeah, because that seems like a pretty big file to store locally on a SIM. This kind of animated thing, right? And it's not like the device is talking to the network to go get it. Like, I put the SIM in, I power it on, it's right there.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, when I activated the phone, I actually hard resetted it, and I activated it on the network here, and it just worked immediately. I just don't, and it gave me all the network connections and everything, just like an iPhone works. So
we should find that out.
It's cool. I find it cool.
I want to spend a whole day doing a deep dive investigative piece on this and have 400 people read it.
I am already Googling.
Carrier splash screen. All right, final piece of listener mail. Let's hit it, guys. Jamie, thank you for writing in. This one is from Mark Hilton. Mr. Fisher, hey, Pocketnow geniuses. Hey, normally when we read something like that, it's in the comments and it's sarcastic, but I think Mark
I was about to say.
It's the positive genius.
It is. There are a couple of no-name OEMs out there that, as of late, are planning on putting out some well-spec'd devices, as far as internal hardware, for about a fourth of the price of the well-known OEMs. My question is simply this. What is your opinion on unknown OEMs versus a giant like Google running stock Jelly Bean? Is it tomato, or do giants deliver a better product? Also, would you recommend me purchasing these knockoffs, as some fanboys would say? Much love from Jamaica, your pupil, Mark Hilton. Mark, thank you for writing in from Jamaica. Our first piece of listener mail from Jamaica.
Yeah.
Make me want to take a vacation. So, guys, I think we're all probably going to be as one on our answer here.
No.
Are we?
I don't know. Let's see.
Michael, you remember our experience at the cesspool. Sorry, CES pool.
Yes, I do. The cesspool being the fringes of the CES trade floor, where not much is there but cheap cases and.
Okay, so Mark,
crap.
we're gonna tell you a little story. We were at CES with a mission. We had a mission of a certain amount of videos that we wanted to film, and there came a point where we just ran out of content.
There wasn't much to see at CES.
There wasn't much to see, and so
in our sector,
exactly in our sector, I guess. And so Michael and Brandon are like, "What do we do?" And okay, let's go up to the South Hall where all the CES pool is. And, there are a lot of promising concepts. And by the way, Mark, if you didn't know, some of these unnamed OEMs actually build for the high companies. These are like, what's the name of them, Stephen? They were ODMs, like HTC. That's the way HTC began as a company.
Yeah, like white boxing? Is that
Yeah.
What's ODM? I think it's ODM.
Yeah, original device manufacturer. Yeah.
So, okay, so for example, HTC was an ODM. That's the way they started.
They were an they built stuff for UT Starcom, under UT Starcom and
exactly,
Audiobox
and for Compaq.
Yeah,
and then they started with their brands like QTech. You remember the brand QTech?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
The HTC Star Trek was branded QTech for a while.
Exactly, and so for different markets, and so I guess there is a lot of promise, but just to give you an idea, if no real OEM invests in actually using these companies as an ODM, just to give you an idea, their Android implementation is terrible. I've actually, in my country here in Honduras, it's very common to see these knockoff phones, and they're bad. I mean, they're bad. If it's not the cheesy displays, they're just cheap for a reason. They don't last, and so I wouldn't recommend it personally because I have seen them. I have not necessarily used them, but I have come in contact with a lot of people that do have them. The fake Galaxy S3s that look identical, and their software implementation is terrible.
Stephen?
I am hesitant to completely dismiss these guys just because I really love feeling like I'm getting a bargain on something. But I completely understand. I wouldn't buy one myself. Let's put it that way. I understand these concerns about you don't know if you're going to be getting software updates. And, like Jaime was saying, they're just not well optimized on the software side. They're not going to perform like the same sort of hardware would from a more respectable manufacturer. I think the bigger problem now, though, is that the good stuff has been getting so cheap that there's less of an excuse to spend your money on one of these pieces of junk.
Exactly.
I don't know about this 4 times less expensive. That
sounds about right for some of those Chinese.
But just remember,
like a $70 tablet, I guess.
Okay, Mark is in Jamaica. iPhones there cost $1,000 for a 16 gig.
Right.
I know. I had a lot of Jamaica friends in UPS, and that's they would go ballistic buying phones in the United States because phones were extremely expensive in their country.
And so
I
you're
do
not
know
going to
that.
see like the $300 Nexus 4 for sale in every market.
No, you're not. You're not. No, you're not going to see it
instead, right?
I guess, Mark. Bottom line, if LG can't figure software out, the cheap ones won't either.
They see me trolling.
I like that.
I'm going to go with you guys on this. So, yeah, we are all as one here. Stephen, I appreciate that you still have some hope for some of these guys. And, we shouldn't paint with a broad brush all the time. Mark, I think some of these knockoff manufacturers probably do make a pretty good product. But due to the factors we already mentioned and this old truism that saving up your money for something of quality is almost 100% of the time much better than blowing a little bit of money on a cheaper product. All of this militates against throwing your money at these knockoff devices because I think you'll just be happier if you can maybe wait, I don't know, even if it's as much as 6 months to get enough money to get the device you really want rather than the knockoff. I think you'll be better off.
And I'm going to give you an example. I mean, if the price difference was disproportionately insane, then you could buy a phone every 6 months and not care. Like, for example, here, the price for appliances like a refrigerator are skyrocket. They're crazy. And then there are these stores that will sell you probably an irregular refrigerator or an irregular stove, and they'll charge you. So I'll give you an idea.
Not quite right angles.
Yeah.
Okay.
Irregular refrigerator is going to be my new band name, by the
It
way.
actually keeps food hot.
Yeah, and irregular Android-powered refrigerator. I'll give you an idea. So a refrigerator in my country, stainless steel, 2 doors and everything, will cost you anywhere close to $2,500.
But does it tweet?
No, that's the problem. Okay, that's like your typical price for a refrigerator here if you want to buy the high-end models. But you could go to the store and see the same refrigerator for $250. So this is 10 times a price difference. So when you have something so disproportionate, I'm like, damn, I could buy a refrigerator every year because these people only give you 1 year of a warranty for the full high-end $2,500 fridge. I'd rather buy a fridge every year and save all that money. And so that's where it makes sense for you to buy something that's a knockoff or cheaper. If the price point is 10 times the difference, then go crazy over it. But the problem...
No, hold on a second. Buying a new refrigerator every year, even if it takes you 10 years to spend the same amount of money you would spend on a high-end one, do you really want to change out your refrigerator every year?
No. You buy 10 refrigerators all at once.
Oh, you stockpile them right in the basement. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess the point that I'm trying to make is, for example, in the case of phones, the price difference is not significant. So that's the reason why I never recommend the cheap Android tablets or now the cheap phones. And the second point is, listen, your experience with the phone is really not necessarily the hardware. Phones are not anymore to make phone calls. If you really want the experience, you need the display, you need the quality. It's just not the same. Yeah. It sadly isn't. That's the problem. It's like, what's wrong with the Nexus 7? Oh, the viewing angles. And they're like, oh, the viewing angles are not bad, and the color reproduction is not bad. And I'm like, wait a second. The only thing you really interact with on a tablet is the display. So if the display is bad, the tablet's bad. That's just the point it is. Yeah. That's the problem. That's the way I see it.
Yeah. I don't know. I think we can go back and forth on this a whole lot, but there are priorities. There are things that militate either direction. One thing I think that is probably something we can all agree on is that, Mark, if you were to buy one of these really cheap devices, I think after less than a week you would understand why they're so cheap. And
what you need to do is save your $10,000 for a Virtu Android. It will be worth every penny.
Yes, I think that is exactly right. Jewel-encrusted Virtu running Symbian.
Guys, running Android 3.2.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, running some sweet gingerbread action. A honeycomb on a handset. So that's those are some excellent pieces of listener mail. I want to reiterate that now that the podcast has gone long enough, I've had 2 separate replies to my suggestion, and the listener mail only special edition of the Pocketnow Weekly will indeed be happening. It's going to be happening next week. Hooray! Gentlemen, I hope you will both be back to join us for that, and I hope as many people on the team can join as possible. So, but definitely, listeners, do tune in. We will try to get to your listener mail. We are in the hole, though. I mean, we have tens of of backup listener mail in the queue, so we might not get to all of them. But we'll get to as many as we can.
all those Jaime or Windows Phone hater mail, those are going to be censored.
Yeah, those go to a special corner.
We will get beeper ready.
Right. And but I think for now we have a lot of work to do, and we know that you do too out there in the world, folks. So we are going to call it an end to this episode of the Pocketnow Weekly. Hey, find us on Twitter. Steven is at Steven Schenck, StephenSchenck, where he doesn't tweet that often, but we still enjoy it when he does. Jaime is at Jaime_Rivera. And as always, you can find me at Captain Two Phones. Some of us spend a little more time on the Pocketnow forums than we do on Twitter. Visit us there at forums.pocketnow.com. You can also follow Pocketnow officially at Pocketnow on Twitter, as Pocketnow on Instagram, hooray, as Pocketnow on Facebook and Google+. And you can leave us a review on iTunes or Xbox Music if you want to be a doll. And if you have a topic, question, or suggestion for the podcast, you just want to say hello, or you want to get in under the wire before our special listener mail edition of the Pocketnow Weekly next week, email us at podcast@pocketnow.com. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you next week. Nobody's going to do the button?
Beep.
Beep.
Nice. Always end on a strong note.